Well, I can do it. Okay.
I keep it in my pocket. Yes. It fell out of my pocket. One of them gave it to me. It's a little.
Any questions? Okay. What's funny is, even as long as you guys are involved with natural,
yeah, I like wearing rings, but I have to take it.
I scheduled
Take it off and then I take it off.
Okay, we'll figure this out.
Yes.
I go and play my final on the piano.
I've spoken to that person before. At your university.
I'm going to her friends and I'm talking about it. I figured that's why she was smoking so much the hair was so burnt. So I had to listen several times.
If you like it, you don't have it on the regular.
No.
The weather.
No.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I told them they cannot tell me they cannot tell me I don't want to hear it. That's all there is to it.
If you ask for politics.
In denial, and I will stay there.
No, I get it.
Well, I have some health issues with my hearing very bad. I can't hear surgery on the spinal cord. Plus, I'm 75 years old. Geriatric issues in my things that you might realize. If you live 75%.
Go say hi to Daryl.
Things that go wrong, you wouldn't know you were human.
I think we've got about 5 minutes. 2 minutes.
My only request is that you speak. My only request is that you speak slow enough. Yes, but you can hear yourself. I have hearing aids too. He's thinking so much. But he has a tendency to talk.
They are also they have to but yeah, when they started talking about yes. And they also want to ask you.
Good morning. Welcome to the Auburn Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, located on occupied ancestral land of the Muskogee Creek Nation, housed in the Baptist Church formerly built by the hands of freed African American slaves. My name is Richard Shelby. I'll be assisting this morning. We welcome you. We know you come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you. We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. We hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. We hope you will find ways to provide outreach to others in our congregation, in our local community, and in our world community. I call your attention to the announcements that are printed on the back of the order of service. Please read these for important information about the fellowship life. Spoken announcements will be heard at the end of the hour. On behalf of our members of the fellowship, I extend a special welcome to all visitors who are joining us for the first time, and to those of you who still feel like visitors. If you have not already done so, please fill out our visitor book at the front near the greeters, or digitally by visiting auuf.org/visitor. You may also contact our minister, Reverend Chris Rothbauer, at minister@auuf.org with any questions or concerns you may have. As we prepare for our service this morning, please remember to turn your phone and other electronic devices to silent. Let us move into the service, willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connection in all forms.
Our opening words are from J.E. Abernathy, Jr. Let us seek the quiet and the calm. Let us lay aside our loud calling. Let us lay aside our struggle. Speak softly. Let us listen to the melodies that recall other proportions. Our moments tarry not with us. Let us then seek the dimension that endures beyond all nowness and here-ness, beyond all requirement and all particularity. Let us speak softly that we may hear. Let us enter into the quiet.
light our chalice this morning with these words from Cynthia Landrum. For the wonder and inspiration we seek from the sun and stars, and all the lights of the heavens, we light this chalice. As is our tradition, we also light a candle in solidarity with those families separated at our southern border, and for the estimated 10 million Ukrainians separated from their homes within the besieged country of Ukraine, and for the 3.7 million Ukrainians who have found homes elsewhere in Eastern Europe. Our opening hymn is number 90 in the Gray Hymnal, From All the Fret and Fever of the Day. I invite you, if you have a joy, concern, a milestone, to come forward one at a time. Oh. Thank you, Joe. One of the ways we can proclaim the warmth and caring of our community is by sharing our joys, concerns, and milestones. If you are joining us virtually, we invite you to type your joy, concern, and milestone in the YouTube chat box during the music for meditation. We invite those in person to, one at a time, drop a pedal into our communal bowl during the music for meditation. Spoken joys and concerns will be invited following the music. you have a joy, concern, or milestone, you're welcome to come forward one at a time and briefly share it with the microphone. Please maintain social distancing by coming up one at a time.
My grandson Malcolm, my only and grandson, had his musical debut in Brooklyn this weekend when he did his first drum solo.
What about canvassing coming up now?
In a little bit.
Okay. Thank you to all who shared their joys, concerns, and milestones this morning. These joys and concerns were committed in advance for sharing. They were not submitted in advance. May all the joys, concerns, and milestones of this community, those shared aloud and those held in silence, be received into the care and concern of all present. Our moment for all ages today is led by Patience Milius.
Good morning. I might need some help returning the pages. Okay, so our story today is Layla's Lunchbox, a Ramadan story by Reem Faruqi, illustrations by Leah Lyon. We won't be needing this for a while, said Layla's mother, handing up Layla's lunchbox. Imagine, I won't be eating lunch for a month, replied Layla with a twirl. I won't be having to pack lunch for a month, said her mom with an even bigger twirl. The year before, Layla had wanted to fast with her best friends Han and Ishra during Ramadan, but Layla's mother had insisted she was too small. Remembering that, Layla stopped twirling. She missed her friends. Moving from one continent to another had been hard. On the map in her atlas, North America and the Middle East were only 10 inches apart. But in real life, she was much farther. She wished she was only 10 inches away from Han and Ishra. She knew the sign by her highway said Peachtree City. You'll love to call it home. But she didn't agree with that sign. Abu Dhabi still felt like home to her. The next morning, before sunrise, Layla's mom gently nudged her. Layla, she whispered, "Sari time." Layla chomped on her chocolate chip pancakes with her eyes closed. "Delicious," she said. "Come, let's pray now," said her mother. After Sari, Layla snuggled back into her bed until her mom woke her up again, this time for school. As she left home, her mom handed her a note. "Layla, please give this note to Mrs. Penworth." Without her lunchbox to carry, her fingers felt extra free and squiggly. She felt so light, skipping to school. On the bus, she read her mother's note. "Dear Mrs. Penworth, this will be Layla's first year fasting for the month of Ramadan, so it is an exciting time for us. Please excuse Layla from lunch for this special month. Thanks, Mrs. Malik." Layla didn't feel so bouncy anymore. What if Mrs. Penworth didn't know about Ramadan? No one else would be fasting with her. She folded the note into a teeny tiny square and hid it in her book bag. Layla walked slowly to her class. Her throat felt dry all morning. When lunchtime arrived, she still hadn't given Mrs. Penworth her note. "Layla, did you forget your lunch?" asked Miss Penworth. Layla opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Samantha volunteered. "I'll share my lunch with Layla." Mrs. Penworth said, "Thank you for this offer, Samantha, but Layla, please go get a sandwich from the cafeteria." Layla followed her classmates to the cafeteria. "Layla, do you want some of my sweet roll?" asked Anna. Layla thought of telling Anna that she was fasting, but she didn't think anyone at Sunnyfair Elementary School knew about Ramadan. "No thanks," she said. "I didn't bring my..." "Are you sure?" asked Anna, unwrapping the sweet cream roll. Layla watched the cream roll get smaller and smaller. She didn't feel so sure. Cream rolls were her favorite. She looked away. Her nose still smelled food. Layla wished she had given Mrs. Penworth her note. Even Isaiah's bologna sandwich looked tasty, and Layla didn't even like bologna. Her stomach rumbled. Suddenly, she had an idea. While everyone was busy eating, she sneaked out of the cafeteria. Her stomach stopped growling. "Why, Layla, it's a pleasure to see you, but what brings you here during lunchtime?" asked Mrs. Carmen, the librarian. Layla felt safe among all the books. She opened her mouth, and this time the words tumbled out. Layla told Mrs. Carmen that Mrs. Penworth and her classmates didn't know she was fasting. She told her how she missed her Hand and Ishrad. She felt good to tell someone all the words that had been inside her mind all morning, and especially to tell her about Ramadan. Mrs. Carmen understood. "You must feel special to fast this Ramadan," said the librarian with a smile. "I do," said Layla, "but why is it so hard to explain?" "You know what I always do when I can't get my thoughts out or when I get shy about talking," said Mrs. Carmen. "I write my thoughts down." Layla got to work. She wrote neatly, adding an extra loop to her capital L. She worked so hard her cheeks turned pink. "Dear Mrs. Penworth, I didn't forget my lunch today. It's Ramadan. My mom finally let me fast. This means I won't be eating lunch for an entire month. Sincerely, Layla. P.S. I'm Muslim. P.P.S. My mom wrote you a note too. Here it is. P.P.P.S. Here's a poem I wrote about Ramadan. Ramadan is a month Muslims celebrate, at a time to count our blessings and appreciate. Muslims fast before sunrise to sunset. But wait, that's not all just yet. Ramadan is a time for lots of prayer. We help the poor people to show we care. So in the day, I won't be eating any food, but hopefully I'll stay in a good mood. Layla hurried back to the cafeteria to join her class. Before school was out, she quietly dropped both notes into Mrs. Penworth's desk. The next morning, Layla swung her fingers as she waited for the school bus. Would Mrs. Penworth like her poem? Layla hoped Mrs. Penworth wouldn't think she had forgotten her lunchbox again. She slowly climbed each step on the school bus. In class, Mrs. Penworth didn't say anything to Layla, so she wondered what had happened. At times like this, she wished Han and Ishrad were there with her. They would know what to say. At lunchtime, Layla's feet felt heavy. She wasn't sure Mrs. Penworth had seen the note. Everyone would think that she had forgotten her lunchbox again. As she was leaving class, Mrs. Penworth patted Layla on the back and handed her a message. Mrs. Penworth had made a capital L in Layla's name extra loopy. Dear Layla, I enjoyed your lovely poem about Ramadan. I'm impressed you're fasting. What a special time for you and your family. Would you like to share your poem with the class today after lunch? You can go to the library this month instead of the cafeteria. Mrs. Carmen is excited to see you. Sincerely, Mrs. Penworth. P.S. Mrs. Carmen told me you missed your friends. I hope that you'll keep making friends with our class. Layla twirled all the way to the library. She couldn't wait to share her Ramadan poem with her class. Later that afternoon, she would celebrate this day.
That's to the end.
Did you like it? What part did you like? Do you girls want to share?
It was a definite maybe.
Thank you.
Laura.
May your hearts know love and your hands do justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
Please join me in the spirit of contemplation in whatever way feels right with these words by Gary Kowalski. Maybe prayer doesn't mean talking to God at all. Maybe it means just listening, unplugging the TV, turning off the computer, quieting the mental chatter and distractions. Maybe it means listening to the birds and the insects, the wind in the leaves, the creaking and the groaning of the trees, noticing who else is out there, not far away, but nearby, sitting so still we can hear our heartbeat, watch our breath, the gentle whoosh of air, the funny noises from our insides, marveling at the body we take so much for granted. Maybe it means listening to our dreams, paying more attention to what we really want from life, and less attention to all the nagging, scalding voices from our past. Or maybe it's about listening to each other. Perhaps if we just sit quietly, we'll overhear a peace whispering through the centuries that's missing from the clamor of the moment. Maybe prayer means listening to the silences between the words, noticing the negativity of space, the vast, undifferentiated, and nameless wonder that underlies it all. Maybe prayer doesn't mean talking to God at all, but listening with the heart to the angel choirs all around us. Those who have ears, let them hear. Blessed be you.
Good morning. My name is Carter DeShazo. Can y'all hear me okay with my mask on?
Yeah.
Awesome. I am here for our Canvas moment this morning. As you all know, we kicked off the Canvas, which is where we raise funds to work on our annual budget for the fellowship. So I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about what brought me to AUF. After the election of our 45th president, my spouse and I found ourselves looking for like-minded community. I personally wanted to not feel crazy, like there were in fact other people who shared my values, because it felt hard to find at that time. So that is what brought me here and what led me to this community. The Canvas kickoff this year was right after we lost Mike Garrett, and it really got me thinking outside of like my own little community bubble here, but also about the extent of the lives that have touched this place and been touched by this place. And not to be a total downer, but community really has shown up a lot in the great amount of loss that we have seen in the last few years. We have lost Chastity Hurd, Mike Garrett, Eddie Peake, Janice Ross, Lisa Henry, Nanette Chadwick, Chuck Rossi, Cassidy Meadows, and Paul Starr. And I don't assert that that is a wholly inclusive list. Some of those people I knew better than others. Some I talked to every Sunday, and one was even one of the reasons I came back after my first few visits and was the reason I chose to be a greeter. So personally, part of me is giving with my pledge in honor and in memory of those people. This community has lost a lot of people, not only in death, but this is a transient community. So a lot of people who have been a part of this community have also just moved to different locations. But this community has lived on because people cared and have committed themselves to being a part of this place. This community is a living, breathing, and changing organism, and we even found a way to make it work during a pandemic. That is a sign of a strong community to me. We wanted to make this work. People move, but they still stay in touch. I see it in the listserv all the time. I see it when people come back and visit, and in stories of your friends that are very much alive and still part of this community, even if they're not physically here. And that is another sign of a good, strong community. People have attended this place for decades, another sign of a strong community. And while this is about money, it's not just about money. You can give to this place with your finances, but also what makes this place work are people giving, committed to giving of their time and effort, showing up early to be an angel, teaching RE, singing in the choir, accepting a position on a committee. All of that is what makes this committee work, or this community work. So people who continue to commit themselves, I see it every week over time. It's another sign of a strong community. So this Canvas is surely about the present. It is about our immediate financial needs, but it's also how we ensure a future, one present at a time. Seeking community is what brought me here, and it is why I'm standing up here today. I'm giving in the name of community for those who ever sought solace here, for those who committed with their time and money for this place to be here, for me to find solace, and for those who can hopefully find solace here in a future community. So I ask that you give in this Canvas in the name of community as well. Thank you.
The light of our chalice would soon flicker and die without the oil that nourishes its flame. And just as this flame cannot burn without oil, this religious community cannot survive or thrive without the financial as well as the personal support of its members and friends, the oil that keeps the flame of our liberal religious faith alive and fuels the shared mission and ministry of this fellowship. Let us now give freely and generously an offering to sustain and strengthen our shared religious community, a community of memory, hope, faith, and love, We are now the keepers of its flame that burns for justice, its dream of beloved community, its vision of a world made whole. Make a donation online via PayPal. Please visit auuf.org. Donate. Please indicate in the notes whether your donation is for a pledge or offering. If you are writing a check, please make your check payable to AUF with a note on the memo line as to whether the offering is for your pledge, and drop it in the offering bowl or mail it to P.O. Box 669, Auburn, Alabama, 36831. If this is your first time with us, please allow the offering basket to pass by. Your presence with us is gift enough. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Cheeseburger, milkshake, cola, french fries, we're pretty hungry, make it large size. Cheeseburger, milkshake, cola, french fries, everyone's in a hurry, so we have to hit the drive-thru. Ice creams in the plastic spoon, we love fast food. Yum cream with the plastic spoon, we love fast food. We phone it in for lunch or dinner. We pick it up if we can't have it delivered.
Pizza and wings or cheesy nachos, greasy burritos, golden tacos.
We take those everyone's in a hurry, so we have to hit the drive-thru. Bowls of chili barbecue, we love fast food. Yums of chili, we love fast food. We phone it in, we send a text to place our order. If we can't have it delivered. We love fast food. We love fast food. We love fast food. We love fast food. Everyone's in a hurry, so we have to hit the drive-thru. What else are we gonna do? We love fast food. What else are we gonna do? We love fast food. We love fast food. We phone it in, we send a text to place our order. If we can't have it delivered, we pick it up if we can't have it delivered. Why? Because we love fast
A reading from Summer al-Bayati, the Arabic phrase sabr wa iman, patience and faith, is familiar and commonly offered Muslim value and appears many times in the Holy Quran. Sabar wa iman, patience and faith. Beloveds, we must have patience and faith. More than that, we need resilience, perseverance, persistence, like the lioness in your home lying in wait for the moth who flutters its wings, taunting, or like the flower that awaits the sun, speaking, unveiling, unwrapping slowly against a vibrant golden plain. A regal lioness surveys her surroundings. Patience and faith requires courage and strength, like the refugee who travels thousands of miles to begin a new life in a new place, traversing the unknown, crossing the borders of their mind. Patience and faith means I am grateful, like the baby who looks up and smiles while held in the cradle of love, or like the first moment of freedom after being chained in a prison cell for so long. And I've lost my document. Sabar wa iman, patience and faith. It is good to have patience and faith. Thank you for electronics.
In my family, food was something of a holy thing around our house. It felt frequently like there was sometimes too much food, even when I know we didn't have enough money to buy it, and I wondered where it was all coming from. There is an old joke that went around the church that I grew up in that said the reason ministers have a chubby belly is going to all the after-church luncheons and eating all the fried chicken afterwards. And there's probably some truth to that. A truth that hit home for me the first time I had one of my British friends in my home. And after 3 days of these full country biscuits and gravy and eggs and bacon and sausage and orange juice and toast breakfast, my friend whispers to me, "Chris, your mom is the nicest person in the world. I don't know how to tell her that I can't go on eating these breakfasts." So with this much importance placed on eating, you can imagine that the first time I heard about fasting, I didn't necessarily have a positive outlook on it. In fact, the faith that I grew up in was very negative towards the body in general. So when it prescribed fasting as a tenet of faith, I have no doubt that it was yet another way to whip our body into listening to our spirit. And I wasn't terribly good at fasting either. I read these books where people claim to fast for 40 days and 40 nights imitating Jesus, and today I doubt the veracity of those stories, given what doctors tell me about the body's need for water and food. But back then, I believed that it was possible. So for many, many years, I went without thinking much about fasting at all. But in recent years, as I've come into more progressive religious circles, I've been rethinking my thoughts about fasting. And it all really came to a head during my recent trip to Peru. You see, I was a vegan traveling through a Latin American country where meat, and not just meat, but meat that might be considered unusual by our standards, was often a staple in dishes. So I was purposely staying in hostels where I thought I could fix my own food. Imagine my surprise when I woke up at 5 a.m. to prepare to go on my train to Machu Picchu, and the front desk person told me I wasn't allowed to use the microwave. Needless to say, I went to Machu Picchu that morning with only a banana and a little bit of water in my stomach. Probably not the best idea, considering my plan that day was to climb to the top of a large mountain. But I did. And it wasn't the only meal I missed that week, sometimes just because I was so busy, and sometimes due to expediency. And you know what the interesting thing is? It's like the little girl in the story that Patience read this morning. I often found myself not even thinking about food during those periods because it wasn't something that was even on my mind. So it's had me thinking a lot in preparation for this sermon. Is there a sort of redemption for the practice of fasting? Well, I think we have to get down to what is the core definition of fasting. And traditionally, it's meant willful refrainment from eating and sometimes drinking. We'll come back to that in a minute. And it can be partial or total. Some people may fast only from daylight hours, such as during Ramadan, and others may give up certain foods. And there have been traditional different kinds of fasting throughout history, whether for medical reasons, fasting before a procedure while on medicine, or political reasons, fasting as an act of political resistance, or spiritual reasons, fasting as part of a religious observance. But whatever it is, in general, doctors agree that some fasting is healthy for most people. And most people's body can withstand some degree of withholding of nourishment, as I found out. Maybe we won't fast for 40 days and 40 nights like Jesus, but we can fast for limited amounts of time. And most religions today have exemptions for people for whom that isn't true, for people who have medical reasons. It's often also combined with other religious practices such as prayer or meditation. It sometimes occurs during times of reduced work or during Sabbath to allow for greater contemplation. Although it's interesting that in Middle Eastern countries, sometimes people will get up at 3 a.m. so they can have a little bit of breakfast before the Ramadan fast starts for the day. Now, what's interesting when I think about this, we often think about prayer and meditation as universal spiritual practices. But fasting is found in virtually every major religion. In fact, Sikhism is the only religion I could find that actively discourages fasting except for medical reasons. Some see it as a command, while others see it as optional. But what they all have in common is they all seem to believe that there's something to this. There are fasting days, which are days such as Ramadan, which we're about to begin, where Muslim adults fast from sunup to sundown for a month to commemorate Muhammad's first revelation. Or the 19 days of fasting in the Baha'i faith, which we just ended, which are observed from sunrise to sunset, abstaining from all but the love of the messenger of God, the Baha'i practitioners believe. But also some Christians and Jews fast during holy days. And there's also spontaneous fasting, where people will fast for whatever reason they may feel in that moment, whatever call they're feeling. Now that's a little bit about the background of fasting. But why do we fast? Well, this month we've been doing balance as our touchstones theme. And what's interesting And what I even found during my partial fast 2 weeks ago is that it can remind us to bring balance to our lives, to find ways to hear what our bodies need rather than eating even after we don't need it anymore. Now, what's interesting is that, and don't doubt for a moment that fast food marketers are aware of this. If food is in front of us, we are more likely to eat it all. That's why you're likely to eat that great biggie fry or that triple cheeseburger that's in front of you, even if that's not what you need for nourishment. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this in moderation, but what I find is that the more we engage in this, the more it becomes a habit, and the more it has a way of disrupting our balance. So fasting in this way can be a way of rejecting consumerist philosophies that more is always better. And occasional fasting can remind us to listen to our body. Do we really want that triple cheeseburger? Is that really what our body's asking us for right now? Or is it asking us for something else? But more than this, fasting creates space within us to be able to introspect, to remind us what is sacred in our lives. I know for me, during my recent trip, it was almost like a mindful meditation. It was like if you're a runner and you've ever heard of runner zone, it was similar to that. Being so focused on the here and now that nothing else seemed to matter. In fact, Thomas Ryan, in a book about fasting, said that fasting as a religious act increases our sensitivity to that mystery always and everywhere present to us. It is an invitation to awareness, a call to compassion for the needy, a cry of distress, and a song of joy. It is a discipline of self-restraint, a ritual of purification, and a sanctuary for offerings of atonement. It is a wellspring for the spiritually dry, a compass for the spiritually lost, an inner nourishment for the spiritually hungry. When combined with other spiritual practices like prayer, meditation, journal writing, or reading, a period of fasting can create time to deepen our spiritual lives, giving us an opportunity to recognize what is already there. And we recognize what's truly important in our lives. Yes, I love and miss my mother's food, but since she passed away about 6 years ago, I haven't had it since, and though Calvin is a great cook, he'll never be my mother. I'm grateful for that. But what's truly important is the memories of how my mother's cooking made me feel. What's truly important is the way that the food was used as a way of bringing us together. And it's only been since I've been away from that food that I've recognized that. Now, I said I would get back to the definition of fasting, because what I found in progressive religious circles in the last decade is a shifting of how we think about fasting. And you might have even seen it if you know anyone who's practicing Lent right now. Traditionally, Lent was engaged in with some degree of fasting, even if it was just giving up all meat but fish on Fridays. And that is a partial fast. But of course, not everyone can do even a partial food or water fast. And so what I'm seeing more and more is the recognizing that what's important isn't what we give up, but rather that it leads us to introspect about what is truly important. As an example, Ramadan leads seekers to reflect on God's relationship with humanity, and Lent is designed to allow space to think about the death and resurrection of Jesus. In other words, the practice breaks us open in a way that allows us to recognize the patterns that have controlled us and open us up to decide what works best for us. So what if fasting doesn't have to be about food? I have colleagues right now who are fasting from social media for Lent. I use social media so much for ministry, I'm not sure I'm at the place where I can do that right now, but maybe one day. But what they're recognizing, and I think most people, there might be one or two people in this room for whom this isn't the case, but most of us remember a time before there was social media. And yet it's so present in our lives that it sometimes takes over. Even as I'm talking to you, this thing is vibrating, telling me there's notifications going on Facebook, trying to get my attention, trying to take me away from what I'm doing so that I can focus on it rather than on all of you. For my colleagues who are fasting from social media, it's a way of bringing balance back to that relationship with social media. It isn't that they're going to give up Facebook forever, although some might. But it's about finding new ways to break the patterns that have come into our lives and distract us. Because fasting brings us back into balance. The practice should be something that allows us to reflect on how our lives have come out of balance. In other words, it's not much of a fast if you're a vegetarian and you say you're going to give up meat for Lent. But it's a recognition that sometimes tilting the balance back to the other side can help us find what's right for us. For example, if you've ever exercised too much, like going up a mountain, you might recognize that your body is going to ache a little bit to let you know that you overdid it. But it's resting after that exercise, not forcing yourself to go out and play a game of soccer the next day, that's going to help you get back into balance with your body. And through that balance, we can find greater wholeness, recognizing what it is we need in our lives. Thomas Ryan suggests that reducing anything that you have an abundance of can be a fast. If you watch the 8 hours of television that Gallup now tells us a lot of people are watching, or streaming services, maybe that's something you can give up. If you eat too much meat or too much sugar or too much bread, maybe that's something you can give up. Ryan even suggests that reducing the amount that we complain or judge others can be a fast. So as you can see, he's very open to the possibility that everyone can fast in some way. So what I want to challenge you as Ramadan is coming up, I'm not going to ask you all to follow along with Muslims and fast from sunup to sundown. With food and water, I mean. But I am going to challenge you to think about how you might be able to build these sorts of balances and counterbalances into your life. Of course, the advantage of times of fast days like Ramadan or Lent or the Baha'i 19 days of fasting is that Practitioners know they're coming, and they're not surprised by them. They can prepare for them. It provides a pre-scheduled way to know when it's time to practice, and provides a flow that allows us to experience the seasons of the year. So maybe one thing is to commit. What if instead of giving up social media for a whole month, you gave it up once a week or once a month? Or what if instead of giving up television for an entire month, you did it once a week or once a month? It has to be voluntary too. I don't believe in forcing someone to do it. That's not going to bring the balance, but that's going to frustrate people. But there can also be times of spontaneous fasts. I certainly didn't plan on missing some meals during my trip, but it did allow me to recenter when circumstances demanded it, and it allowed flexibility into my life. And finding the balance of where is the place where we can experiment with giving up things temporarily. That is how we can find balance. That is how we can find space for introspection in our lives. And it creates opportunities to deepen our lives, no matter what our theology or our religion or our spirituality. So this is your homework. I won't be grading you. I won't be asking you to turn it in on my email or anything. But what is a way that you can find to reduce something in your life, even temporarily? Though you might not be able to give up food, is there something that you could give up even temporarily? What can you do without in order to experiment living life in a different way? And make it regular, but not so rigid that you can't get a little spontaneous on occasion. I would hate to be in the middle of fasting and have Peter bring by some of his bread and I have to turn it down. By learning what we need and don't need in our lives, I think we can also work towards building a more just world. After all, because fasting is about abundance, it is a privilege to be able to fast. Esther Perel wrote, "In our consumer culture, we always want the next best thing, the latest, the newest, the youngest. Failing that, we at least want more intensity, more variety, more stimulation. We seek instant gratification and are increasingly intolerant of any frustration. Nowhere are we encouraged to be satisfied with what we have, to think this is good, this is enough." I think the sort of fasting that I proposed this morning can be Esther Perel's reminder that what we have is enough, and that we always have an abundance to give to those who don't have that privilege. It can remind us that we don't need all we think we do. I've been watching YouTube videos recently, and they're all obsessed with PlayStation 5s because of how rare they are because of the part shortages. But there was one video that I really liked where the kid was screaming, "I have to have it, I need it." And the parent said, "No, you don't need it, you want it." Not only was that good parenting, but it's a reminder of so much in our lives. How much do we actually need, and how much do we want? And it's not that we can't have what we want, but it's remembering when we do have what we want, how blessed we truly are. I believe that the beginning of a world based on our higher values rather than our fears of scarcity begins with this awareness of the difference between what we need and what we want. And it starts with a reevaluation of what it is in our lives that we are truly thankful for. So go forth today. Find what it is that you could bring into your life to balance yourself. It's not going to look the same for everyone. That's not why I'm saying everyone get off social media the next month. But whatever it is, consider it a grand experiment and consider your own life the laboratory. May it be so. Our closing hymn is number 18 in the great hymnal, What Wondrous Love.
Love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends who fade and sorrow mend, with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing.
Please join us in extinguishing our chalice. You'll find the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be our guest today after the service for coffee hour outside here at the Bush Center. This is our opportunity to chat with people about the service and how your week went. If you are not signed up for our email list, please make sure to do so to receive updates about ways to connect. You may find information on signing up at our website, auduf.org. Subscribe. I invite anyone with a spoken announcement to come forward at this time.
I have an announcement because I was the VP of Finance. I'm in my 4th year, and our bylaw says I cannot continue. So we're looking for a new VP of Finance for the next upcoming year. So pass it around, think about it, volunteer. Anyway, I also want to emphasize, as the VP of Finance, why we pledge. We hope we will have unpledged donations from the collection plate. We hope we will make money at the annual auction. We hope we will sell a bunch of game day parking spaces. But we know that we don't know that any of that will happen, so we cannot work up a budget based on that. We can only count on the money pledged to AUUF for the making of our budget. Can we count on you?
Two announcements. One of them is a reminder that this Sunday not today, but next Sunday at 3 p.m. will be the memorial service for Mike Garrett here in the sanctuary. His family definitely invites any of you who want to come to be present and honor Mike's life. We are going to be requiring masks. And there will be a Zoom option that Daryl will be setting up and emailing out if anyone doesn't feel comfortable during that time, being in person during that time. So if you want to attend by Zoom, watch out for the listserv for that. Also, just a reminder, Sunday, May 22nd will be my installation here in the sanctuary. A reminder that installation is the formal act of a congregation making the minister their settled minister. It happens whenever there's a new settled minister. And though I've technically been here 3 years now, you might remember that the original date was put off for something happened in the world that made us have to put off the date. But the installation committee, who is Amy Kaiser, Kristen Starr, and Jan Newton, will be reaching out to people and looking for volunteers. And I encourage folks to volunteer for various things within the installation to make it a truly AUUF event. We're going to have people coming in from all over the country. So let's show them what AUUF hospitality looks like.
And if anybody suddenly decides they want to join the choir, we're not having rehearsal this week at all. But hopefully there will be some more of you, especially some of you at home, hint, hint, who will be back with us so we can have a more full choir when it comes to the installation, because I don't want us to sound puny and weak, which obviously they won't.
I will have my quilted note cards out at the tailgate of my Honda Element by the Bush Center again. But they're available for any size donation. All the money goes to the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, which among other things is supporting Ukrainians in their current crisis.
Please join us in our psalm of benediction.
Our benediction is by Marjorie Newland Leeming. Remembering that the universe is so much larger than our ability to comprehend, let us go forth from this time together with the resolve to stop trying to reduce the incomprehensible to our own expectations, so that wonder, that sense of what is sacred, can find space to open up our minds and illumine our lives. Amen. Blessed be, and go in peace.